Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Byington, and in this video we're talking about the medieval play Everyman. So this is from the late 1400s. Generally, the two claims are that this was either originally in English and it was translated in as a Flemish play, or vice versa, as far as the origins go. And the whole reason that's a thing is because if you look at the names, these are all allegorical character names, and even the concept of an everyman, that's something where you can still identify characters like that today in modern films and television shows. It's supposed to represent like anyone. It's kind of like the expression, it's Joe Blow. It's just your average person. So it's I had another example here of it's like an evolved Greek chorus. So if you've ever studied a Greek play, there's a chorus in it, and it's a collective of people acting and speaking as sort of one idea. Um, Sometimes it's portrayed as like a newscaster. So it's a voice of the moment of the times. So like all of those are appropriate kind of ways to help you like kind of get it in your head of what exactly every man is, what that character is, what it represents. Now, this is a morality play as opposed to a mystery play. Now, the difference is that mystery plays usually were portraying biblical scenes, and morality plays are a little more general. It's the whole idea of teaching a moral of the lesson. Sorry, a lesson of the story, or the moral of the story. And when if you're a student in my class, we get to that later when we have a unit on some like really superficial skimmings of literary theory and literary criticism. Moral or intellectual criticism kind of looks at that. It's things like parables, that those fall in that category. So you see that with the play Everyman of it goes on to try to demonstrate to the reader, the viewer, which would have been more of the case because this was the late Middle Ages. Not many people are necessarily literate. Um, and they would have been watching a performance of this rather than reading it, more than likely. And a morality play like this is just like, see, here's what happens if you play by the rules uh, in religion and you do A, B, and C, then you can reach the goal of going to heaven instead of hell. Now, something else important to note here about the morality plays and mystery plays as well is that there weren't these weren't put on in theaters. Theaters were banned. As a matter of fact, we didn't have theater in the way you might think of it going on later into the age of Shakespeare, or even in the ancient world, like Greek drama. We haven't had theater for maybe about 1,000 years. And that's because once Christianity begins spreading across Europe, they see it in this like very kind of puritanical lens of no, we as humans did that back in the ancient world, like with the Greek plays. So when Greek dramas were performed in like the theater of Dionysus, it was it was part of the state religion. It was a big ceremony for worshiping the gods and goddesses. And so Christianity, even though, like I've talked about in the other videos, especially for this unit in the Middle Ages, you have those layers that aren't really as split and divided as they may seem, that coexistence of the pagan world and the emerging Christian world. Um, Even though those things often were side by side as culture is evolving over the centuries in the Middle Ages, they didn't like theater, it's, well, when you think of performance, if you have a ceremony of some sort, like a wedding or a funeral or even a graduation ceremony, there is performance to that. There are, not so much with a funeral, but maybe like for a pallbearer or something, or someone who is going to read a eulogy at the funeral. There's performance in that. There are rehearsals for weddings. There are graduation rehearsals. So these things were too close to ritual and ceremony from the pagan world, and so theater is a big no-no. Theater buildings, like any kind of establishment designated as just a theater for performance, is just nope, it's not happening. And it's not until we go on later past the Middle Ages, going into the early modern period, the English Renaissance, that we start to have stationary theater. So these plays, morality and mystery plays, you would see them perhaps most likely performed like a parade going through a town. So let's say you have a wagon going through one part of the town and they're doing one scene, and here comes the next wagon and they're doing another scene, or they might just do it in an open space like the town square. So it would vary on the region or even the acting troupe, because they're not really an acting troupe. It's too pagan. So in Everyman, we have an opening with a messenger, and by the way, if you already know the ending, you have a doctor who comes out on stage. And it's not like a surgical doctor or a physician; it's a doctor of theology. So it's a religious man, a man of religion. um, these two characters, the messenger and the doctor, you can look at that as like a prologue that is assumed to be a type of chorus. So it's like just kind of almost a different type of everyman. It's a no man who comes out and gives you this introduction of, hey, here's what's going on, here's what's going to happen. And then the doctor tells you in the end, here's a summary of why you need to have listened to this, here's the moral of the story. So then God comes in and God is talking to death. God is angry because people on earth are awful. They are not afraid of God. They are sinning. He says they're all greedy and lecherous. And this is a totally different kind of God than, my previous video was on Julian of Norwich, and she did not have a wrathful God in her writings, right? So this is more of the kind of God that you had in medieval Christianity. And so God sends death to earth to collect every man. So it's not just one person, it's like, hey, everybody's going to die at some point. So it's meant to be like, this could happen to you. So we have first that interaction with death and every man. Death says, hey, I'm here to collect your soul. You have to die. Everybody has to. And every man is really disappointed. Like, I'm having a good time down here. I want to keep living my sinful life and not worry about death or God or all that. And Death says, well, you better get with it. And every man asks for a dozen extra years to kind of get his stuff together, right? And every man has this idea of, okay, I know how to fix this. I need to bring some people with me so the journey to death will not be so bad. The first person is fellowship. So that's your friends. And something else about these morality plays, that there would have been often, not always, but pretty frequently, a type of physical humor to these portrayals. Um, and you don't really have that kind of slapstick with the play Everyman, but there is meant to be humor in the way each person eventually rejects Everyman. So Fellowship is like, okay, yes, what is this journey we're doing, friend? I'm your ride or die. Let's go. But then when Everyman tells Fellowship what it is, like, wait, death? Yeah, that's not for me. Sorry. So the next people that every man approaches, next characters, next allegories, is kindred and cousin. And even kindred says, in wealth and woe, we will with you hold, for over his kin a man may ask anything. So this is kind of like that blood is thicker than water kind of idea. And kindred and cousin are like, yeah, we're ready to help you. What is it you need, every man? And then he tells them, oh, we die together, and they're not okay with that either. They're not interested. And this is one of the funny kind of departures, one of the two funnier ones in the story. Cousin says that, what, like die? Well, I would rather fast on bread and water for 5 years. And when every man is like, so, my cousin, will you not go with me? Cousin says, no, by Our Lady, so by the Virgin Mary. I have a cramp in my toe. So that's cousin's excuse for not being able to go with every man to death. So kindred departs, exit cousin. So you have stage directions for these. Okay, now every man is like, okay, well, all the people around me have disappointed me. No one's going to help me go on my journey to death. What about goods? All my stuff. I have so much stuff. He talks about having stuff that's like piled high in the corners. So he's kind of like, maybe that really ugly $80,000 Tesla truck I have can drive me on my journey to death. And Goods comes out and is like, hey, I'm here. Like, what do you need, every man? And every man tells him, hey, we have to go die. And I'm going on my journey to death. And Goods is not necessarily repulsed by it in the same way as fellowship, kindred, and cousin, but Goods says, well, the thing is thou shouldest fare much the worse for me. If you try to take me with you on your journey to death, your judgment day isn't going to go over very well because you're not supposed to be into material goods here on earth. So we have Goods exiting the stage. Every man is starting to get kind of worried and starts to think, okay, like I want to be a good person. I want to go to heaven on my judgment day on when I get to complete this journey to death. Who else? Ah, good deeds. That would probably be the right card I should play. But poor good deeds is like when every man calls for good deeds is like, here I lie, cold in the ground. It sounds like me when I had COVID a couple weeks ago. Um, Thy sins hath me sore bound, that I cannot stir. So poor good deeds is just like all weak and frail. Um, and every man it's like, well, wait, how do I make you better? What can I do to help strengthen you? Because I need some good deeds to get into heaven, and good deeds has enough strength to show every man it calls it his account book. This is a ledger of the good deeds that he has done, and good deeds says, look, the books of your works and deeds, and it's empty because every man hasn't done anything good, like ever, apparently. So now we need knowledge. Knowledge now enters the stage. And knowledge is like, here's what you have to do to set all of this right. You have to go to confession. And so when you go to confession, you are able to then live a life for God. You're able to do these good deeds and fill that account book. And so this is what every man does. He listens to knowledge, and then this strengthens good deeds. It says, good deeds can now walk. Oh, thank God, now I can walk and go and am delivered of my sickness and woe, is what good deeds says when after every man does confession. And a note about confession here, remember, these are Catholic practices because this is the late Middle Ages. We haven't had the Protestant Reformation yet. So we don't have the other branches of Christianity where confession might not necessarily be a component of being the way of clearing oneself of sin. So there is a comment here I want to touch on real quick. Knowledge also tells that you have beauty, discretion, strength, and the five wits enter, but there is also this moment where knowledge mentions that by the way, there are sinful members of the clergy, and they giveth sinners example bad. But the five wits tells every man, well, just have awareness. So this is having your wits about yourself, like that expression, to know when it's right or wrong to trust the priest and their prayers and what they discuss in church. So we have the entrance of these these last few allegories: discretion, strength, beauty, and the five wits. Knowledge says you have to have these people to help you complete that journey to death, and they'll go with you to that point. They can't die with you, but they help you get there. And these are all things about your person, right? So your physical strength, your beauty, so your looks, and your five wits, your intuition, your discretion. So now, though, they we are arriving at the end, 'cause this is just a whirlwind of allegory and it all happens really fast. We have arrived at the grave, and every man says, "Alas, I am so faint, I may not stand." And so he's now at the foot of the grave and says, "For into this cave must I creep and turn to earth and there to sleep." So, like, it's time. He has arrived at his death. This is important. So, the first of those physical things about the body to leave is beauty. And this is the other kind of funny one. So, when every man said, like, I've got to go down into this cave, I have to go into this grave and turn into earth, beauty immediately responds, what, into this grave? Alas? This is the equivalent in modern English of, ew, you want me to go down there? You want me to go in that grave? And so beauty is the first to leave every man as he dies. So the next person is going to be strength. Strength tells every man, I have you far enough conveyed. So I've escorted you as far as physical strength can take you. You're dying, you don't need physical strength anymore. And as soon as strength leaves, then discretion is like, yea, in faith I will go from thee to every man, for when strength goeth before, I follow evermore. So as your physical power, your physical strength leaves, your character leaves, your five wits, your intuition is right behind discretion. So now all those things that comprise your physical being, your physical existence on earth, they are gone. And the only people left is every man and good deeds and knowledge. So knowledge explains, like, well, I don't go to the grave either, but good deeds will go with you. Knowledge can't go because you don't take your brain with you when you die, right? It's part of your physical body. So the good deeds that are the legacy of the person, the things, the good things, the good positive things that that person put into the world while they were alive, the things like when we have a celebration of life, or when someone, I don't want to say necessarily a celebrity, but someone who was high up in a certain industry, like did groundbreaking or pioneering things, like that's what they're remembered for. So these good deeds, like we still talk about it on Earth, but that essence is they're saying these good things they put into the world go with them and their spirit when they die. Okay, so then we have the ending. The doctor comes out on stage, like I mentioned, so a doctor of theology, and explains that, like, hope the audience was paying attention because this is how you get into heaven. So this is Everyman is the most commonly taught morality play, but this is also an excellent example of how the morality plays functioned, the kind of lesson of the story that they are trying to instill in the audience. Okay, that's all for the Everyman play. Thank you for watching.